So I'm personally really passionate about reducing methane emissions because I love food and fibre, I love farming, and I really think globally agriculture, it contributes around 25% of global emissions at the moment, but there's a huge opportunity to switch agriculture from being part of the problem to the key part of the solution globally. So I'm really excited about trying to champion agriculture as a big solution to climate change globally.
So tell us about the problem of methane in livestock agriculture.
So globally, agriculture accounts for 40% of methane emissions. Methane's, I think, quite unique in that it's a short-lived gas. So there's people on both sides of the argument saying that, hey, we don't need to lower methane emissions as much. They're advocating for this GWP star metric because it's short-lived and it's degrading after around 12 years. But on the flip side of that, there's also a massive opportunity with methane emissions to have a real profound impact on global emissions reduction in the short term because it is such a potent greenhouse gas in the short term. So, cuts to methane emissions globally can have a really profound impact on total warming around the planet in the short term.
What new exciting technologies are coming up in this field to address this problem?
There's a number of exciting new technologies coming out when it comes to methane reduction. There's methane vaccines being developed, still pretty early days in the labs. There's synthetic methane reducers. These are, chemicals that are produced in the lab that you feed to livestock that inhibit methanogenesis, which is the process by which methane is created in the gut of a ruminant. It's an enzyme that inhibits the enzyme in the gut. There's also this Asparagopsis seaweed, which is close to my heart, given my PhDs on seaweed as a climate change solution. So there's this seaweed that has this bromoform compound that inhibits methanogenesis in the gut. So there's a number of really exciting new technologies coming to the table. None of them have yet been scaled up, and it's unclear if we can scale them up on pastoral farming. So easier to feed these things to livestock in feedlot situations, but a little bit unclear on how we could scale them up in pastoral farming. But there's some solutions to that as well. Like, could we put these methane reducers in salt licks or in water troughs or in bolus, which is like a slow release capsule in the ruminant's gut? So you could give a bolus to livestock to a cow, and it would slowly release these compounds into the ruminant's gut, which would inhibit methane producing. And the great thing about that is it not only cuts down on emissions, but it also is good for the livestock because it means livestock gain weight faster, and so there's animal health benefits as well. Yeah.
What needs to happen in order for these solutions to scale?
Funding's the big one. We need a lot of funding to go into R&D for methane reduction technologies. We also need funding to allow to finance this onto farms around the world, to scale it up so farmers are receptive. They see that not only cutting methane emissions is good for the planet, but it's also good for their bottom line with weight gains that will happen in livestock as a result. So yeah, funding this technology onto farms for farmers so that it's not a cost to them to introduce this technology on farm.
Do you see any role for regulators there? Do we need to be making rules that farmers should follow?
Yeah, so I think there's a really big role for regulators to play, both with the carrot and the stick. I see Denmark has just announced they'll be the first country to introduce methane pricing, which will, I guess, as a stick that'll really motivate farmers to introduce methane reduction technologies. But we also need the carrot as well, payments to farmers so that they can adopt this technology to scale it up. And I guess that needs to come from the big food companies, but also from regulators as well.
So what does this mean for the consumer? What should they have in mind when they go to the supermarket?
Yeah, so the question of how much consumers will drive sustainable consumption in agriculture is really interesting. I'm proudly wearing all wool today, and from my family farm as well, which is really important to me. And most consumers don't know where their clothes come from, and where their food comes from. So consumers certainly have a big role. I have this debate with my dad quite a bit, actually. He thinks that consumers are going to drive the majority of sustainable transformation in agriculture. I say that the majority of the world's consumers are purchasing purely on price, so we certainly need everyone. We certainly need consumers to pay more attention to their clothes and their food, but we also need government and business to play their role as well.
Mm-hmm. And what are your hopes for COP? What would you like to see coming out of these negotiations at the conference?
Across the board at COP, I want to see deep, meaningful, systemic change, I think, like we all do. I guess specifically at this COP, Article 6 progress, I think Article 6 can facilitate really meaningful change for a lot of farmers around the world if we can be pragmatic about the way we implement these carbon markets through Article 6. So it allows small-scale farmers all around the world to access new revenue for nature restoration on farms. That's what I would really like to see.
Well, Finn, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.